Hey, welcome back everyone. Today's video should be relatively short. By the way, I have the garage lights off because it is just such a nice day. I like having the natural light coming through here. And so hopefully there's enough lighting that you guys can see everything. But the garage is a little bit of a mess right now. Nothing major, but we've got some cabinets moved around in here. Namely, we've got Space Fury moved out of the way because we've been getting into the back of Tempest. We've been doing some things with this. We've got a couple FPGAs and the original board, and we've been trying to troubleshoot a sound issue with one of the FPGAs that we thought was a problem with the board. Carrie's been doing some troubleshooting, and it sounds like everything kind of points to we've got a bad volume pot. It's real finicky. It may need to be replaced or cleaned, one or the other. But that's what it sounds like the issue is. So she's been poking around with it back here, and that's why we've got Space Fury out of the way. And then earlier I had Reactor out of the way because I was trying to get to the monitor in Circus. I was readjusting that, dialing that in, tweaking things, and spent a bit of time with that yesterday. So that's why we've got some cabinets out of the way. Nothing major, but you know, when you got this many games in a small space, that's what ends up happening. It's kind of like Tetris. You have to move one game out of the way to get to another, and yeah, you guys know how it goes. But yeah, speaking of which, even Asteroids Deluxe here, there's been some stuff done to that. Again, nothing that's broken, but Carrie's been working on some stuff with that. Or long story short, we really like the game War of the Worlds, and she's got a multi that has that game on there that works in this cabinet with Asteroids Deluxe, and we were going to swap that in there. We may or may not actually end up doing that. We may just leave it as an Asteroids Deluxe. We'll get back to that another time. But anyways, the purpose of this video is I want to do some fixing, more like maintenance on Circus here. So this is Exidy Circus. I believe this came out in 1977. It's a black and white game, obviously. There's some colored gels up here to give the balloons the appearance of color. But we got this from our buddy Sean out in Minnesota. If you're on the Cloud forums, you'll know him as Fetish Boy with a PH. But at one point, he had two of these, and Sean restored one of them. And then the other one, this one, he sold. And so Carrie had this one shipped. I want to say she got this in like 2021, 22, somewhere in there. So like 3-4 years ago, not too long ago. But it's a very, very fun game. But as you can see here, this one is not restored. The bezel here is a bit faded. The control panel is a little bit worn. You know, there's some lettering missing here, a little bit of rust. But all in all, for a vintage game, it's in pretty good shape. If I could, I would love to find a nicer bezel, you know, because you can see the coloring, you know, this would be, I think this is like pink, supposed to be pink. So this is a bit faded, but anyways, one of the cool things about it is that it's got a bunch of patina on it, and I don't know if you can see that, but you can see like there's some scratches in here, there's some names carved in there. It's got a bunch of patina, and normally I'm not a big patina person. Like I usually like to restore things, but one of the cool things about this is that this game came out of an arcade that I frequented when I was a kid called Outer Limits. In fact, any of the Minnesota people probably know this. Outer Limits was the local arcade at the Crossroads Mall in St. Cloud, Minnesota. And so me, Sean, most of the Minnesota collectors know about that arcade, and that's where this one came from. So it's kind of cool that this came out of the same arcade, one of the main arcades that I went to often as a kid in the 80s and the early to mid 90s. I don't think it's there any longer, and it's definitely, if it is, it's called something else, and it's all redemption stuff. So anyhow. So what I want to do in this video is look at the spinner, namely the potentiometer that controls it, because what's happening right now is when I'm playing this game, ever so often, inconsistently, this will skip around at certain parts throughout the stage. You're supposed to, you know, just use your spinner and control this, this teeter-totter down here. But ever so often, you know, I'll just have my hand on it and it'll skip around, namely in the center here, and then sometimes on the ends as well. And it's very inconsistent, but it's not fluid. And so I suspect that either the pot needs to be cleaned or replaced, but it's definitely a problem with the potentiometer that's in there. What's interesting about this game is the fact that it does, in fact, the spinner here does in fact use a pot. It's a 5K ohm, I believe, potentiometer. So unlike games like, say, Tempest that use optical sensors, which allow you to get real precise readings, but also you can just continuously spin the spinner. There's no start and stop point on it. Arkanoid's the same way. A lot of the spinners basically from the 80s on up use those optical sensors, but this game uses a potentiometer. So if you turn it, there's definitely a stop, a start and a stop. So there's one end and the other. You can't just keep spinning this thing since it uses that potentiometer. But yeah, I believe that that's the problem there. And so what I want to do is look at that, verify that that is the problem. I will probably end up replacing it if it is, because I found replacement pots for this for like $8 or $9. So normally I would go through and clean this, and I still may, but anyways, I want to take a look at that. And then what I want to do is put a molex on this, because right now all the 2 buttons and the spinner, the potentiometer, all have wires that are soldered directly to their terminals. And that's fine and everything, but it makes pulling this control panel off a pain in the butt, because you would have to desolder those. And so I just want to put a molex connector on there. So nothing too fancy or extravagant with this video. It's just going to be pretty basic, but let's take a look. Let's remove this and take a look and see if we can get that fixed. Okay, so the first thing we got to do obviously is remove the control panel. And what's interesting about this is that it's not this. The entire control panel, so to speak, that has the controls that's removable is just this piece of metal here, this black. A piece of metal that's been painted black, and obviously the white lettering. So it's just this. This actually does not remove. It's glued in. I think it's probably doweled or stapled. But this is permanent, and this is our removable piece here. And it's held on with just 4 wing nuts. So let me just take those off here. As I'm doing this, I just noticed on the bezel that it says the silk screening for it was done in San Jose, California, which is about an hour away from here. Too bad they're not still in business. I would love to get a reproduction or a new bezel, but no one makes them for obvious reasons, because it's kind of this like vacuum formed plexi where it's got the balloons on the bezel that spell out Circus are kind of 3-dimensional. They kind of pop out, and so it's not as simple as a lot of other bezels. Okay, so we got those out here, and then so here's our control panel, and you can see it's pretty basic. We got our start buttons here, and then our potentiometer. And since everything is soldered here, and I'm going to be making a new molex, I am just going to snip these off rather than desolder them, because I'm going to add new wire here, and it's just going to be a lot simpler. But before I do that, let me I'm going to mark these. Hang on a second here. Let's see. I'm just going to use some tape and just mark the wires as they lie, so that I don't really screw this up. It'll just make it easier for me to remember which wires go to which button. So we'll just do this. That's 1P. Let's see, here's our pot. And 2P. All right, now let me grab a wire cutter here. I'm gonna leave a little, I like to leave a little bit of the wire still attached to the button. That way it'll help me remember. It's kind of like the same thing as marking, you know, 2P, 1P, and all everything like that. But yeah, I like to leave just a little piece of the wire on there. I don't like to cut it too close. That way, if I ever need this as a reference, I've got that. And then we've got our pot here. This is especially critical for that potentiometer. But yeah, that's all there is to it. And yeah, it is a little rusty. You know, I wonder if I should maybe sand that rust off, and polish the bottom. But anyways, for now, for the sake of what I'm doing here, there it is. All right, so let's take a look at that potentiometer here and see how that reads. See if it's worth cleaning it or just replacing it. And I might clean these buttons too. I'm not sure yet. All right. All right, here's our control panel. Let me grab my multimeter. Actually, let's flip this around here. And what I want to do is just see how the readings look on this, whether we're getting a full range, if the numbers are kind of jumping all over the place, as I kind of would suspect. But there are 3 terminals. One is our 5 volts. That's this red one here. So our wiper is here. I'm using alligator clips with my leads. And then we'll put the ground there, because I believe that's the ground. And then let's flip this guy over. And here, let's see here. Let's turn this to ohms. Let me, I'll flip it this way. I'll try to read it upside down. Okay, so I have it turned all the way far left here. And let's see, let's zoom in a little bit here so you can see this. All right, so it's showing about 1.6 ohms. If I crank it all the way, we should get over 5K ohms, because it's a 5K pot. And there you can see it's, was it 5.867? That's a little high. But for all intents and purposes, we're getting full range. But what the problem isn't the paddle getting all the way from the left to the right of the screen. The problem is that it kind of jumps in between. And so I just want to see if I go real slow. Okay. Yeah, like I barely put any pressure on. So that's pretty good. 2, 3, and then it just jumps to 20. That's pretty, well, it kind of, okay. It is a little spotty. I know you can't tell how much pressure I'm really putting on here, but it kind of, yeah, so it goes up and it kind of drops down. It kind of bounces down a little bit, even though I'm turning it up. And that might explain why it's a little sporadic. Let's see here. So we're at 680, and then it drops down. So yeah, so as I'm turning it up, every once in a while, it will actually go down, even though I'm not turning it backwards at all, if that makes sense. So like, it should be climbing, and then it should just stop. And then sometimes it drops a little bit, even though I'm starting to turn it up. So that might explain the problem. Also, I mentioned this, I don't know if I mentioned this or not, but when the paddle is all the way to the right, when the teeter-totter's all the way on the far edge of the screen, and I start turning it back, it should start bringing the paddle towards the left, towards the other side. But it takes a fair amount of spin, a fair amount of play in the pot, in the spinner, until that starts happening. And I think I know why, because we're getting this high reading when it's maxed out at 5.86, and it's supposed to be closer to just 5 ohms. And so if I start turning this to the left, it takes a while before that number drops closer to 5. And so that's probably why. Now, this pot isn't bad by any intents and purposes. I think I could probably, you know, take some deoxit maybe. I could probably get it a little bit better. But again, new pots, I bought 2 of these. These were like, I think $8 on DigiKey, so I just bought 2 of them. So I am gonna replace it. But before I do that, let's test what a new pot, what this new one reads, so for comparison. Because what if this one reads the exact same? Like, then there is no point really, other than maybe it's a little more precise. So let's test that one. Let me put the control panel off to the side here. And let's see here. Let me just compare here. So, okay, so it's the 2 left. So these 2. So these 2 pins right here. All right, I'll put one there, one here. Let me turn that all the way down. Let's see here. Okay, we got what? 2.4 ohms. Let me just go max. Let's just see what this reads max. So max, this reads 5.24 ohms. 5.24 K ohms, I should say. So that's significantly less. I mean, we were getting 5.8 kilo ohms on the original pot, and this one's only doing 5.2. It's a lot closer to 5. So I would venture to guess that that if I replace this or replace that pot with this one, that paddle, that teeter, when it's on the far right edge of the screen, it's not going to take very much in order for it to, of turning it counterclockwise to get that to move to the left. I just want to see, now if I go real slowly, do we get any of that drop back? Let's see here, I'm trying to read this upside down here. Oh, you know what? 16. You know what? It does kind of do the same thing, doesn't it? Although I don't have the cap on this, so it's hard for me, you know, because I'm just trying to manually twist this little tiny metal pot here rather than having the spinner handle, you know, that big wide thing on there where you can be a little more precise. So it's hard for me to really know, but yeah, I think I am going to replace this and see if that improves things at all. All right, so let me just shut this off here. I know it's not a definitive answer. I was hoping for something a little more obvious, but the fact that the original pot reads much higher, 5.8, instead of this one reading like 5.2, does kind of point me towards that maybe this original pot is a little out of spec or isn't operating quite as well as it should be. But, you know, with some of these things, you just got to try it and see what happens. And even if this solves my issue, I have no reason to toss this original out. So I'm going to save this regardless. Who knows? Like, maybe I'll come back to it and decide that it's just worth cleaning and it just functions for whatever reason better. Because this isn't the exact same model as this potentiometer here. This is the equivalent, the substitute that DigiKey or Mauser or whatever the data sheet recommended. And so, you know, even though that the specs, everything should line up, you know, with some of these games that are this old, who knows? Like, maybe there's some little tiny difference that makes this all the better. And I want to use that. So no sense in throwing this out, especially not yet. But I'm going to replace this, and I also want to pull these buttons out, and because I'll just make it easier for soldering. But yeah, I think I'll go from there. So first things first, we got to get this cap off, and it took me a long time to find the right the right bit. There's 2 set screws in here. I don't know if you can see that. There's one there. It's just real buried in there, and then there's another here. And I need to use this. I think it's like a T7. We're just gonna loosen that up here. And this one too. And voila, all right. Put that off to the side. And then we need to remove this. I need to get a wrench for that, I think. Yeah, and grab a wrench. All right, so we should just be able to loosen this nut here. Okay. All right, and there's our original pot. Interesting, if you look at the pattern there. A little bit different than this guy here. There's all these extra holes here versus just the solid, but otherwise it looks pretty darn close to the same. In fact, the shaft looks identical, so all right, let's see here. While I'm at it, let's also take these buttons off. Let's see, I'm probably going to need a different, of course, I'm going to need a different wrench, unless I can loosen these with my finger, but I don't think I'm going to get that lucky. Let me just grab pliers. Pliers will be easier. Okay. Yeah, I might see if I can clean this a little bit. I don't know if I'll show that, but it's a little bit dirty. All right, let me put this off to the side here. And let's get this other one off. All right. All right, I'm pretty well set up here, I think. I'm going to start by taking these wires off the buttons here that are soldered on here, the little globs of solder and the little tiny pieces of wire. And hopefully I can use these helping hands here, because I want to be able to get the soldering iron on there and still have a hand that I can use pliers to pull everything off. So hopefully I can do that here. Let's see. Oh, that might work. All right. Hopefully that works. Let's see here. Let me tighten this up. There, that's better. And what's a good angle? About like that, I suppose, to change this to about, let's see, something like that. There we go. And let's open up that hole there. There's still some solder in there. What the solder pullet just had enough pressure to launch that out of there. Where did that go? I'm looking for that button. Let me see if I can find that thing. That button went freaking flying. Oh, there it is. It's underneath the I don't know if you guys saw that. I just went to remove the, well, it got the solder out. It got the solder out of there, but man, who knew that this thing would be strong enough to launch the, the button out of the alligator clip there. All right, well, okay, I guess that was a success. Let me put this back in here. Now, the clip, the alligator clip, isn't quite wide enough to really get a clamp on this thing, to be fair, but jeepers, I wasn't expecting that. All right, let's see here. Oh, there we go. All right. Okay, I think we're good there. I'm going to do the other button, and I'll just do this off camera because it's more of that, it's more of the same. Let me just speed through that, and then we'll get ready to solder some wires onto these, some fresh wire. All right, so I just finished cleaning the solder and the old wire out of the terminals. So our buttons are ready. And from here, it's just a matter of soldering some new wire on. So I already cut some wire. Let's grab some here. And I'm going to start with the buttons. And so each button has two wires, a ground, obviously, and the coin up button or wire itself. And let's see here. Maybe I'll start. It uses two terminals. There's 3 terminals on here, but these buttons only use the 2. I'm guessing the third one would be if you want the button to be like normally open, or wait, normally closed. But yeah, so we're using these 2 terminals here. And so I'm gonna thread this wire. Let's see, let's start here. Let's see, let me zoom in a little bit here. Okay, so let's see here, let's go. Let's do this. We'll come up here. And then let's wrap it around like that. I don't want it to get too close to the other terminal so it doesn't make any contact. I could put heat shrink. Actually, that's probably what I should do, but oh well. I guess I'm being a little lazy. I might regret this, but I just don't want these to make contact. Otherwise, they'll give us false button presses, essentially. Because that's all this button is doing. It's when it's not being pressed, the wire for the switch and the ground are not making contact, and when you press the button, it closes the circuit. So if these accidentally touch, then it's going to act as if you press the button, if that makes sense. All right. Okay, that one's pretty good. No, we'll start with this one, I guess. I was going to thread the other one. Maybe I should, but okay. Let's see if we can get this in a good place here. Yeah, that's pretty good. All right, let's get some solder. Let's see here. This isn't very exciting stuff, but we'll do one, and then I don't know, I might just speed through the other one. I don't know, you guys can let me know if this is worth me showing, or if I should just time-lapse this, or just cut away. Because there's a bazillion other videos out there that show the same stuff, and I'm not sure this is really adding any value, but whatever. Okay, I think that's pretty good. Oh yeah, that's not going anywhere. I just want to see if I can get this a little. It's a little bit cleaner. Okay. Yeah, that's good enough. All right, let's get the ground wire on there. And the ground wire is not going to be, it's a bit shorter. I made it a bit shorter because, let's see here. Here's our control panel. So my game plan here is I'm going to have, we've got our buttons on the sides here, and I'm going to have the ground tie in to the ground on the pot from either side. So basically what I want to do is have everything kind of come here, and then we just have one group of wires going to the molex. So it'll make for tidier wiring. It'll make for better cable management. Oops, there goes my light. I need to get a new battery for my light. But if that makes sense, I basically am just going to daisy chain the ground from either button to the pot. So rather than going daisy chain, I'm just going to have both of these go right to the center. And that should make, in my head at least, that should make everything kind of neat, because then we'll just have one set of longer wires coming out with our molex on it. But let me go get a new battery for the light, and maybe I'll also just finish this up. Well, you know what? Let me go grab another light. We'll finish this one, and then maybe I'll speed through the second one. All right, so on with our ground wire. Trying to think here, which way do I want the wire? We should probably have them going in a similar direction because they're going to be coming into that molex. So let me. The benefit to doing solder versus using quick disconnects is that it is on there. I mean, you don't have to worry about a crappy connection for the most part. It's definitely a more semi-permanent solution. But you lose that convenience unless you make something like a molex. But even then, like, having the individual terminals, there's benefits to both, I guess, is what I'm saying. All right, let's pull this guy off here. Take a look. Okay. Well, good. Yeah. So this will be either. So honestly, well, it doesn't matter with the other button. I can still do it in the same direction and just flip it around. I haven't decided if this is player 1 or 2 yet, but all right. I'm going to do the other button, and then we'll take care of the pot, the potentiometer. All right. So I'm done with the soldering here. I did the other button, and then I also did the potentiometer. And let me just show you guys how this is all gonna look. It looks like a mess right now, but here's essentially how things are gonna work. Let me move this button off to the side here and move this button off to the side here. So we'll have our buttons off to the side, and then we'll have our 3 wires coming down like this along with these 2. So essentially, we'll have 5 wires, and hopefully, once all the cable management is done, this will look nice and tidy. But we'll have our 2 buttons and our pot, and then 5 wires coming down. And the way that now I didn't obviously show the soldering here. Let me just show you kind of how this all works here. Okay, so there are 3 wires. We got our 5 volts, our wiper, and our ground. Ground is self-explanatory. The wiper, this is basically the signal. This is what changes in value when we turn the potentiometer. This is the resistance. So when you turn this, essentially this is a variable resistor. So when you're turning this, that changes the resistance, and this is that signal. This is what sends that signal. And normally, under normal circumstances, it's really just these two wires. In fact, that's what we were using to measure with the digital multimeter earlier, the resistance as we would turn this. But the 5 volts, a lot of these arcade games require, and to my knowledge, the reason for that is that essentially when you're turning this and that resistance changes, it also changes the voltage. This is 5 volts, but it changes the value, and that's what essentially gets sent to the game. And so when it measures a difference in voltage within that 5 volts range. And so when you're turning this, yeah, the resistance changes, but then also this voltage changes, and that's what the game reads it as. And so that's why you need this wire here. I didn't know that before. I actually had to just look that up. I only knew about these two, and I've never really understood why that 5 volts was there until I looked that up. And I guess that makes sense, because a lot of things with these games operate off 5 volts and also a change in voltage. Even monitors for that regard, you know, when you got your red, green, and blue, and that's a change in within around 5 volts. It's a small change, but you know, if you turn the drive pot or the color way up, that voltage increases, and you turn it down, and and so on and so forth. But anyways, so we got those all done here, and so now before we put this in the control panel, let me just come out here. Before we actually install this into our control panel, what's next is, since I want to put a molex on here, I want to put those pins on here. I might as well do that now while it's real easy to get at these wires, and we're not confined by everything being mounted in that panel. And so I want to do that now, and I'm going to use, I like to use the 0.093 size of connectors and pins. I just feel like they're more robust. They make other sizes. There's the amp style connectors, which I think they use like a 0.084, and like I said, these are 0.093, and I just feel like you get a really good crimp, really good connection. You do typically they're supposed to use a thicker gauge wire in general, but that really doesn't stop me. I'll just a lot of times just double up the wire. But I've used smaller ones. I've used like the 0.062s, and for whatever reason, those just feel so flimsy, and not just flimsy, but it makes it really hard for the connector to make a good contact. I find a lot of times you really have to wiggle them around, and anyways, it's a long-winded way of saying that I really like these 0.093s. I use these molex, these connectors, for just about everything that I can. But all right, so we're going to crimp some pins on here, and let me just get, there's 5 wires, so I'm just going to grab 5 out of here. And these are female connectors because we're using that side on here. I'm going to use the male pins with the receptacle for the cabinet wiring on the other end of this. So let's see here, there's 5. Okay. And let's see, I don't know if you guys, we'll just zoom in a little bit here. All right. So I know everyone's got their methods and whatnot. The biggest thing with all of this is making sure you got a good crimp, but that comes with just having a good ratcheting crimper. I used to use the ones that didn't, the real cheap ones. And yeah, it's a night and day difference when you have one like this. And these aren't super expensive. Don't let anyone fool you and tell you that, oh, you have to get the Molex brand crimper, or you have to get this or that brand and spend, you know, $50 to $100 on a tool. You don't need that. You just need one that ratchets. I think I've used like, I have like 3 of these. Well, this is Carrie's, but we have the same one. And I think these we got for like $20, $25. You know, just go on Amazon. All you need is something that's decent that ratchets, because when you have one that ratchets, it can lock the pin in place like this, and it makes it infinitely easier to get the wire in, like so. And And then all you have to do really is once you have it just in far enough, that's all there is to it. I like to usually go one size down. It depends on the gauge of wire, but until it's really snug. And I didn't really explain what's going on there. Let's do another one here. So I'll usually, especially with thinner gauge wire, I'll just kind of double it over just a little bit. I like to do it that way. I feel like that way it's got more of a good connection. And then if you look at the pin, let's see, this is probably not even going to focus. There you go. So you see these outer tabs here. You want that to hug the insulation. And then these inner tabs are supposed to crimp down and make good contact with the wire itself. And so I like to double the wire over a little bit like that. Then we'll get our pin locked in here until it clicks like that. So I'll insert the wire and I'll keep going until just a piece of that insulation is inside. And come down with it. And then I'll go one lower just to really make sure that it's snug on there. Because you don't want this to be able to just be pulled off. I'm not going to put a ton of force on it, but you can really tell, okay, it's snug. And then I like to see a little bit of wire sticking out on the other end here. That just for my own sake of mind, I know that that's a good crimp, that's not going anywhere and it's making good contact. So I'm just going to do the other few here. It's not rocket science. It takes a little bit of practice, but man, like I used to think that I was doing such a poor job. Well, and I probably was early on. Oh, one more thing. This is a heavier gauge wire here. This 5 volts wire that they had, or it's also the same in the cabinet, but it's slightly heavier gauge. I couldn't tell you exactly what this is, maybe 16, 14, 16. When it's a heavier gauge wire, yeah, you really don't need to double it over or do all that much. This isn't necessary, but yeah, especially once you start doing like a power supply or something where it's like really heavy duty gauge, yeah, you don't need to do that. You probably don't even need to do it here, but again, that's just how I do things. That's not the greatest crimp, actually, to demonstrate. I had too much wire exposed. I had stripped a little bit too much insulation off, and now you can see it's kind of bunched up here. I'm just gonna, the crimp itself is okay, but the wire is kind of bunched up. So I'm just going to, I'm not gonna redo this. I'm just gonna push that wire a little bit further down. It should still work inside our connector. But there you have it. That's an example of not the best crimp. In that case, the mistake was I just had stripped too much wire off. Typically, I do that I strip a generous amount off thinner gauge wire like this for that very reason, to double it over. But in that case, I didn't need to. All right. And then we'll do this guy here. And there. And then we just got one more. Yeah, that's pretty good. And Carrie came into the garage and ruined my entire video. Just kidding. Just kidding. This probably won't even be.
I'm guessing that'll be the.
That'll be where I speed it up or transition or something, or maybe not. Maybe I'll leave it in there. Who knows? All right. So we got all these guys in here. Now we just basically insert them into our connector here, and let me figure out how I want to do this. Let's see here. Put the 5 volts and the wiper up here for the pot. Then we'll put the start buttons down in these corners and the ground there. There's no real rhyme or reason. You know, it's just because we're not using all of these slots anyways. It's 5 wires and this holds 6. But I like to try to make some sense out of it, you know, like organize things. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. It just, you know, the wires just need to make a good connection. Oh, and another little tip with these pins, they have these little ears that stick out, and those are supposed to grab on to the inside of the connector. And so when you press these in, you should hear a little snap, and that just kind of tells you that, okay, that's a good, the pin is inserted fully, properly, it's made a good snug connection. There we go. All right. So next we can put this on the panel. I think we can mount it. I'm not going to do any cable management yet, and we still need to do the cabinet wiring, so we need to do the other end of this connector. But I don't like to do any cable management until I know that everything's working. I've done it too many times where I've gotten everything all nice and neat, only to discover that I made a mistake, or there's not a good connection, or there's something wrong, and I have to undo all that cable management, clip all those zip ties, do it all over again. So, so yeah, let me grab the control panel and let's mount everything in there and then do the cabinet wiring, and then we can test this out. All right, so here's our panel. Make a little space here. There, so you guys can see it. Okay, so let's see here. Button player 1 is this guy here. Well, let's start with our pot, and so these pots have, I don't know if you guys can see this. There's this little notch right there that sticks up, and this control panel has a hole for that, and so it's an easy way. It's kind of like keying it, so you really can't screw it up. So it goes in like that, and then yeah, so let's see here, player 1. So this button here, oh shoot, did I screw this up? I might have really screwed this up because I've done this too many times. I think, yeah, because that's the lip, isn't it? This has to go, shoot. You know what? You know, I've been doing this, I've been in this hobby for what, 20 some years, and I'm still making the same mistakes. I should not have soldered these on. These actually have to be dropped in from the top, and I completely forgot about that. Completely forgot that. I got to do the same thing with this one. There's, because both of these have a nut and a washer, a lock washer, that goes underneath here, but you still have to drop them in from the top. What a doofus. All right, well, I'm gonna go grab my, so let this be a lesson to you guys. Don't do what I'm doing. I'm going to go grab my soldering iron, desolder, and resolder these on after I get them in place here. So let me go take care of that, and then we'll go from there. Jesus, can't believe I did that. You know, I try to think these things through, but still make mistakes. All right, I'll be right back. All right, I'm back, and got the buttons in there and also got them soldered on there. I can't believe I forgot about that when I was doing this. Just completely slipped my mind, and normally I'm better about that, but I still make that mistake. I can't tell you how many times I've made that mistake. But yeah, just goes to show you can be in this hobby a long time and still make the same mistakes. But yes, we are ready here. the last thing to do is put our cap on the spinner here on the pot, and then I'm going to do the other end of the connector, and then we can test this out. So let me grab, oh, here it is. And we need this guy here. So let's put this on. Guess it doesn't really matter. And let's see here. I think that's pretty good. Let's see here. Oops. Oh yeah, that feels pretty good. Okay. All right, I'm going to go crimp those wires and do the other end of our molex connector, and then we should be able to test this out. Let's see here, let's grab the molex that's down here. Hopefully this will reach. And then I got control panel here. I'm not gonna put the wing nuts on because this is just for the sake of testing it. So we'll plug, let's see here. Plug this guy in like that. Then let's just let this kind of drop in here. Again, we'll do cable management after this, assuming everything works. Okay, and let's come up here and shut this light off here. Let's see. I guess that's probably the best best we can do with this view here. All right. Now this is just for the sake of testing. So let's add a credit here. See if player 1 works. That's good. Now, spinner. Spinner works. Let's, oh, yeah, it actually feels pretty good. I'm just going to test the range here. So we're all the way to the left, all the way to the right. Yeah, seems pretty responsive. I'll have to play this more, but all right, let's just die here. Feels, yeah, I'm just going to let myself die here, and then we'll test player 2. Okay, I'm going to add 2 credits here, and let's test player 2 start. Nice. All right, so now we can do cable management. Yes. All right, so this all looks good. So now I'm going to install this, and then let's do some gameplay. Let's actually play this game. I'm really looking forward to this. All right. All right, so I've got the control panel back on here. Everything looks good, feels good. Let's do the gameplay. This is the fun part. So I'm just going to lock this here. And I did discuss this a little bit at the very beginning of the video, but let me just talk about this game a little bit more. Now, this is, again, Exidy Circus. It came out in 1977. And funny thing about this game is that this wasn't my first introduction to it. The first time I played this game was actually the Atari 2600 port. So I had that when I was a kid, and I love that game. You use the paddles, and obviously it's a color game on there, but this isn't much different. It was actually a really good port, but I never even knew this existed until probably in the last, I don't know, 10 years or so. Definitely well after I was in the hobby. And it is such a fun game. It's a simple game. It's very addictive, and I think I've just come to realize that I gravitate towards these games that use a spinner, that use something like this, you know, whether that be Breakout or Arkanoid or even like Warlords, anything that uses a spinner, and particularly a game where you need to bounce something off that paddle, or in this case, a teeter-totter. I don't know what it is about that, but I just gravitate towards those type of games. They're really fun for me. They're almost zen-like. Like I don't know what it is, but they're just very fun games, and they kind of just put my mind at ease. I just really like them. So I don't know what it is about them, but I love these spinner games where you're basically playing racquetball and trying to, in this case, blow up balloons. But I would say that this is probably in my top 3, for sure my top 5 games out here. It could very well be my top 3, which is cool because it is a black and white game. But anyways, enough babbling about this game. Let's talk about what the premise is. Let me go turn the light off. Let's get, let me zoom in here a little bit, and let me go grab the light here. Whew, that is dark. Let's see, how does that look? Not too bad. I might have to manually focus this. Let's see here. That's not too bad. Let me just adjust this a little bit. Hopefully my head doesn't get in the way. Let me just see here. So if I'm playing like this, yeah, that's not too bad. All right, so the premise of this game is really freaking simple. Basically, you're running a teeter-totter. You're a team of 2 clowns. And when the game starts, the other clown jumps off of one of these platforms on either side, and you need to basically bounce the other guy off the other side. And when he falls, he needs to obviously hit the teeter-totter, but you can't hit just any place on here. It's very picky on where your guy needs to land. If he lands anywhere near the center, basically, if you could see this, there's the kind of notches on the teeter, and basically you want to be hitting the end, like the first 3 from the end. If it's a little bit off, if it's like if you're a little bit closer to the center, the guy will just fall through and you'll lose a life. So it's kind of finicky, and the game gets going really fast, but that's the gist of it. I'll talk about maybe some strategy as we get playing here. The one thing, obviously, you need to be popping these balloons, and the upper level gives you the most amount of points, the green gives you the second amount of points, and the yellow gives you the least amount of points. And when you clear the very top line, you get an extra jump or an extra life. But yeah, let me just start a game here. It's easier to talk as I'm playing this or explain things. So just added a credit, and we're gonna get some cool music here. Okay, so this guy's gonna jump off the platform, and right now we just need to get some height and start popping these balloons. And like Arkanoid, you can kind of control where the guy goes. Like, he will do angles. And I haven't played this game enough to really get the intricacies, the little subtleties, but I'm slowly getting there. And you could see I lost a life because he landed too much in the center. And you do see that he does bounce off those platforms if you hit him off to the side. And that can be real tricky because if he gets too much in that corner, it's impossible. There are spots in this where it's impossible for you to successfully land on the platform. And you'll probably see that at some point. I'll point it out. All right, so when you clear one line of balloons, you get a bonus. The bottom one's 200. Okay, and again, it was too far in the center. Green is a bonus of 500 when you clear those, and I think the top one's 1,000. It's either 800 or 1,000. Well, we'll find out, hopefully. Now, right now, what I would ideally like is to get the guy on top of the yellow, because then you can start really, see, you can bounce him back and forth if he's in between the balloons. So there's a bonus of 500. So like that, that's ideal. Like that's perfect. By the way, the pot feels perfect on here. That potentiometer is working great. We really need to clear those two blue balloons, because that will give us an extra jump, and I really need another jump because I'm on my last life. Come on. Oh, crap. So you get the hang of it. It's a very simple game. You get three jumps. I actually just switched the dip switches recently. We had the set, or it was set to 5, but I went on the Arcade website, and the default, or at least the tournament settings for records are 3. Which is good because 5 was actually a little bit long. You could play the game for quite a bit longer if you're doing well. But yeah, if this guy gets in like this corner or that corner and your teeter is flipped around, it's impossible. You basically just run out of space. And that didn't happen in that game. But you know, it's a very short game. It's a very fun game. So you know what? Let's do one more here. This is the problem with these games like this, these addicting games, is that since they're so simple, you always want to keep playing them. Play one more game. By the way, the sounds on this game are freaking awesome, especially that big, deep bass. I always tell people that I feel like you could probably hear that down the block. All right, I need to get out of here. That bass, that big. Let's get up to those blues. There we go. I can't remember, you know, it's been so long since I've played the Atari port, but I can't remember if the guy can bounces off the side like that. That was good. Ah, crap. This is going to be a quick game. There we go. We really need a bonus jump. So now that yellow row should refill in there, and if we could get a guy up on top, I never play this game with all the lights out, and so I'm just like blinded by the marquee or the bezel lights that are blinking. Come on. These points aren't going to add up if we can't get those blue ones. Okay. Oof. Ah, see, I might have been able to get them there. It's a tough game. I think my best score, well, when we had 5 lives, my best score was only like 18,000. So I'm still not very good at the game, but man, it is addicting. Okay, for the sake of the video, I'm going to play one more game. Yeah, for the video. It's not for me, it's for the video. All right. Quality sound. Oh, bonus. I still find myself with my hand over the start button as if it's a fire button like Arkanoid. I don't know why. Habit, I guess. Whoa. Oof, that was close. Really need to get those blue balloons. Come on. Nice, 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 nice. Get that. Nice, go. Ah, that was awesome. Almost got that. It helps if you talk to the game. Yes! So I get a bonus jump now. Extra life, basically. Okay, so yeah, 1,000 points. Oh. Durr. Okay. So if you beat the whatever the high score of the day is on the leaderboard, since it doesn't save scores, you basically get a free game. But yeah, when it's in your home, it doesn't really matter. Ah, crap. See how picky it is about where your guy lands. Oh, I'm screwed. See, okay, so there's a clear example. It was impossible for me to get that guy out of there just because it was in the corner and the teeter was the wrong way. So yeah, you can see now, basically I have an additional credit because I beat the previous high score, which was me. But anyways, yeah, that's Circus. It is such a fun game. I freaking love this game. It's the simple games, right? The ones that make you want to keep playing. But anyways, I hope this was a fun video for you guys. It certainly was for me. That potentiometer that's in the spinner feels great. Everything's working well, and yeah, definitely one of my top 5, maybe my top 3. I have to think about that. But yeah, could very well be in my top 3 games that Carrie has out here. Yeah, so anyhow, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. All right, take care.